Miranda! Miranda, please! What did I do?
I remember going to the movies to see Gothika when it was released. I thought it was going to be a cute little horror film, nothing too crazy. Child, I was spooked. Over the years, I hadn't really watched it much, but while watching it for this recap, I saw it in a whole new light. Yes, it's still creepy, not as scary as it once was, but I realized the change that Miranda went through over the course of the movie and why Rachel's approach was aggressive, but very necessary. Miranda was very much sleeping with the enemy and a bona fide sicko with a God complex. Dangerous combo. With that being said, while watching this movie, I noticed some things and I have my thoughts. But before we get to that, it's time to recap. So let's get into it. As the movie starts, we meet Chloe, a patient of Dr. Miranda, our main character. Chloe tells Miranda that she was attacked by the devil.
He sank into me and set me on fire. Made me burn from the inside out.
Now, Miranda was trying to find a logical reason for this. She believed that she was referring to her stepfather, but Chloe made it very clear that this devil she spoke of and her stepfather were two different people, after mentioning how she killed her stepfather and watched him die because that was the only way to stop him from repeatedly abusing her. Feeling that Dr. Miranda was not hearing her and what she was telling her, Chloe complains about how it feels to not be listened to or trusted.
You have no idea how it feels not to be trusted. You can't trust someone who thinks you're crazy.
Chloe eventually gets so upset that she's not taken seriously that she grabs Miranda, which prompts the correctional officers, we'll just call them COs, grab her and take her back to her cell. Miranda works in a prison where she's a psychiatrist, and after seeing Chloe, Miranda goes to visit her husband, Doug. She tells him about her session with Chloe and how she feels she's getting nowhere with her after so much time. Doug encourages her to give it time and even demonstrates how Chloe may see things by splashing water on a mirror. Chloe sees a distorted image of herself, and it was Miranda's job to be her mirror.
If I'm the mirror and she's the image, then who are you?
So I'm God.
Look at those grandiose thoughts coming through. As they shared an intimate kiss, they were interrupted by Pete. Doug doesn't stay to conversate with him. He rushes off to Willow Creek, their second home, to meet with a contractor. After Doug leaves, Pete asks Miranda if she wanted to get a bite to eat. She declined. You can tell that there was some energy between them. I wish we got to see more of it. But after she dodges Pete's slick advances, she heads to her office. She runs into one of the nurses who mentions that another patient, Shelly, had another attack, and Miranda figures that she may be overmedicated and asks the nurse to update her file. Hold on to this. Miranda then went to her office to work on Chloe's file. That doesn't last long due to a power outage, so she goes down to swim, and after she's done with her workout, she says bye to another colleague and leaves out for work. Pete wasn't far behind. He walked her to her car and insisted on following her down the road to make sure she got off safely. She runs into a roadblock on her way home. Her husband's friend and local sheriff, Bob, gives her an alternate route to take to get home. As she gets closer to home, she calls Doug to tell him she's on her way, but shortly after she crosses a bridge, the call drops. Soon after, Miranda sees a girl in the middle of the road and crashes her car, trying to avoid running her over. As she emerged from the car, she approached a girl who was still standing in the same spot. The girl was visibly bruised and shaken up. As Miranda tries to cover her with her coat, the girl touches her and flames consume Miranda. Suddenly, we see Miranda's eyes open and she realized she was now a prisoner in the same prison she worked at as a psychiatrist. She doesn't know what the hell happened or how she got on the other side of the glass, but clearly she was pissed.
You better tell me why I'm in here, Ivory! Bring your ass back in here!
Listen, she was giving these nurses the business. Pete eventually came in to talk to her. He revealed that she'd been there for 3 days. Miranda immediately requested to speak with her husband, but Pete dodged this by preparing her for what he was about to tell her. He asked her what was the last thing she remembered. She mentioned her session with Chloe, seeing him and Doug going swimming, leaving to go home, the detour she took on her way home, walking into the house and seeing Doug on the couch. Her memories paused there for a beat, but then, suddenly, she remembers the girl. Pete tries to redirect her focus back to what happened to her husband, and Miranda notices that he's speaking of him in the past tense. She sensed the bad news he had for her.
Doug is dead. You killed him.
That night, Miranda has a nightmare where she sees images of what took place the night before. She ended up in prison. She doesn't see much though. The next day, Miranda started her first official day as a prisoner. Chloe spots her immediately and reintroduces herself.
Welcome. You're one of us now. And even if you tell the truth, no one will listen.
Sad, but very true. Before Chloe leaves, she gives Miranda a newspaper article that had the details of her husband's gruesome murder that she committed. That night, Miranda is startled awake. She walked up to the glass door and saw something or someone writing on the glass, "Not alone." She didn't know what that meant at this point, and Miranda was still trying to find the logic in this and assumed she was dreaming, even though deep down, she knew she wasn't. The next morning, she goes to shower, and while she's there, she sees the same girl from the night of the murder. She tried to run and hide, causing a disturbance since she was the only one who could see her. Eventually, the girl catches up with her and slashes her arm. This lands Miranda in the infirmary. One of the nurses mentioned that someone stated that Chloe had been messing with her, so they placed her in solitary. Hold on to this as well. Miranda was cut by a scalpel, but no one knew how it got in there. Pete speaks with her and asks if she cut herself. She told him no. She asked him to confirm some things for her, so she asked if they had an affair. He said no. She asked if he wanted to have one. He said yes. She asked if he thought she wanted to have one. He said yes. And then she asked why they never did, and he said because she was married to the boss. Obviously. He insisted that he was there for her and she could trust him, but Miranda was unsure.
You can't trust somebody when they think you're crazy.
Later, when she goes outside, she runs into another ex-colleague, Phil. She asked him if he could assign her a new doctor, but Phil insisted that Pete was now his best doctor and he supported him fully. The next day, she met with her lawyer, Teddy. He told her about her upcoming hearing and reminded her about the substantial evidence that they had against her. Miranda mentioned not having a motive, but Teddy insisted on pleading temporary insanity, which might not have even worked because Miranda was a doctor and the jury might think she was faking it. Miranda asked him if he thought that she was crazy, and he didn't answer. He does tell her that Bob wanted to speak with her, and Miranda agreed to it. Bob came in and he was cool at first, but eventually his emotions came to the surface. In a fit of rage and frustration, he threw the evidence photos on the table, and Miranda was shocked by one of the photos.
We're done.
Why are you doing this to me?
Later that night, she had another nightmare where she saw more images of what happened the night of the murder. She saw the girl in the middle of the road again, the flames consumed her, and she was clearly possessed at this point. She got home, grabbed an axe from the front lawn, and saw Doug on the couch. That was as far as it went. The next day, Miranda and Pete see Phil. Miranda admits that she was there, but she wasn't alone. She doesn't know who else could have been there, but she believes this is what the message on her wrist meant. As Phil talks to her, a photo gets her attention. She realized that this photo was of the girl she saw that night, and she tells Phil that this was the girl she saw, but Phil revealed that it couldn't have been.
This is the girl I've been seeing.
She's dead.
Later that night, Miranda was startled awake again, but this time she gave in to her curiosity.
I don't believe in the paranormal, and I don't believe in ghosts. But if you are the ghost, then you would let me out of this cell.
Suddenly, her cell opened and she stepped out. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Rachel walking in the hall. She runs to Pete's office where she grabs some keys and sees an old photo of them. Clearly, he was in love with her. Again, I wish we got to see more of this prior to the possession happening. Pete's computer turns on and we see an article about Rachel's death. She has supposedly killed herself by jumping off a bridge. I'm assuming the same bridge Miranda drove over that night. Suddenly, another window opens up and we see Rachel standing in front of Chloe's cell. Miranda rushed off to check on Chloe, but when she got there, it was too late. She runs off to get help but gets captured by some nurses. The next day, Miranda frantically asks Pete about Chloe. He tells her she beat herself up and tried to commit suicide. Of course, she knows this is not what happened. Miranda mentions the tattoo that she saw, a woman in flames. Pete changes the subject to the article he found on Rachel, and Miranda mentions again that she saw her. And Pete doesn't believe a word that comes out of her mouth.
When
She
I
was
saw
washed
her,
downstream, 5
she
miles
was
over
beaten
brush and
up.
rocks.
She was cut
You
up.
saw
The girl was
her?
in shock.
He tries again to get Miranda to speak logically, but we are way past logic at this point. Later on, Miranda runs into Chloe in the courtyard. She apologized for not believing her and asked her what she could do to help. She wasn't prepared for the news that Chloe had for her, though.
It's okay. He said you're next.
That night, Miranda sat at the edge of her bed, preparing herself for what was set to happen to her. Sometime after, she sees movement by the door. I remember seeing this movie in the theaters when it came out. It was packed. When it got to this part, there was the loudest collective gasp that I've ever heard in my life. We were spooked. But Rachel started attacking Miranda, throwing her all across his cell. Child. The COs eventually see what's going on, even though to them, it appeared as if she was slamming herself across the room, and they go to stop her. By the time they get there, Miranda appears to be knocked out, but she quickly snatches the needle, stabs the CO with it, and makes a run for it. She runs all through this prison, up and down hallways, up and down stairs, and hidden doorways, until she finds herself cornered in the pool area. She slowly dips herself into the pool so as to not make any waves or bubbles. She almost gets caught when Rachel appears in the pool, causing her to shoot out of the water, screaming. Miranda makes it to the front entrance where she was spotted by an old colleague. He comes in with a save by giving her the keys to his car. That was nice. I wouldn't have given her the keys to my car though, but she does what Trish and Derry should have done. She pushed the pedal to the floor and got the hell on. As she's flying down the road, she sees Rachel in the rear view, which startles her. Rachel then manipulates the car to go faster, almost causing her to crash into a passing truck and go off the edge of the cliff.
What do you want from me?
Rachel was real funny. Hilarious. Miranda eventually makes it to her home, or at least what was her home. As she goes up the stairs, the crime scene is still the same as it was that night. Suddenly, she sees Doug crawling backward on the floor, legs broken. Then she sees herself walking towards him, a vision of what happened that night.
Don't do this to me, Miranda! Miranda, please! What did I do?
The nerve. She eventually walks into her bathroom where she sees herself in the tub. Soon after, she gets out and stares at herself in the mirror. We see Rachel's face and then the face of 2 other women before the spirit bursts into flames. Sometime after, Miranda cries over old pictures of her and Doug. Suddenly, a drop of blood lands on the image of her and Doug outside of their Willow Creek home. Miranda thinks it's her blood at first, but when she realized that it was not, she knows that Rachel wants her to go there. We fast forward to Miranda arriving at Willow Creek. She enters a barn on the property, and underneath the barn was the sketchiest setup ever. And then she learns who her husband really was.
It's good to be God. I love you.
Soon after, Miranda hears movement in the barn. She goes up to see what it could be and gets startled by an officer. Suddenly, arms reach out to grab her from under the stairs. Turns out it was another victim of Doug. It didn't take long for the news to get out about the victim and what Doug did down in Willow Creek, and Bob was pissed about all the coverage, with good reason.
How does she know that girl was there? You tell me that.
I have no idea, but the point is that the woman is still a murder suspect.
Phil came to the station to speak with Miranda and thank her for helping him find out what really happened to his daughter. He mentions that he had a recurring dream of her burning in flames. Miranda mentioned that she's seen the same thing. At this point, she still doesn't know what it means. Miranda eventually calls Pete and tells him that the man attacking the women in prison is linked to the tattoo and the other suspect who worked with Doug. Now she knows what not alone means. Doug had help. Pete still doesn't feed into what she's saying. He is still trying his best to stay in his logical lane. After discovering all of this, which is so wild to me, like, what more do you need to see? Later, Miranda asked to see Bob. Meanwhile, Pete decided to trust Miranda for once and went to his office to do a little research. Bob eventually makes it back to the station to talk to Miranda, and Miranda tells him about the tattoo. He didn't seem interested until she told him she told Pete everything. He started to ask more questions, trying to dig and see what she knew, asked if Doug had told her anything, even if it was minor. He even urged her to describe the characteristics the other suspect would have. Miranda mentions how the suspect probably grew up with an absent father, had a weird relationship with his mom, maybe tortured animals, and probably was confused about his sexuality. As she's talking, Miranda feels out Bob's energy, slowly sensing that the suspect is right up under her nose. And she was right.
He's desperate.
Desperate enough to talk to me?
Miranda tries to make a run for it, but he grabs her and then tears his shirt open for her to see the same tattoo she saw when Chloe was attacked. He tries to sedate her, but she grabs a needle and sticks him with it. Miranda eventually gets away and Bob shoots at her, shooting a gas valve in the process. Gas fills the station and searches for her. Suddenly sees Miranda, or who he thought was Miranda. It was Rachel, standing in the corner. He shoots at her, not knowing she was standing in front of a computer. When he shoots the gun, the bullet hits the computer, which in turn bursts him into flames, and Miranda shoots him in the head and kills him. And of course, Pete shows up to the precinct after all of this, finally believing her at the very last minute. Child. We fast forward to a year later. Chloe and Miranda have been released from prison. Miranda sees Chloe off to her cab so she can catch her train, and before Chloe leaves, she thanks her for helping her and finally believing her. As she continues walking, she sees a random kid in the middle of the street. It appears as if the fire truck was going to run the kid over, but suddenly he disappeared, and Miranda smiled and kept walking, not even seeing the missing poster with the kid on the front. And that was the end of the movie. And here are my final thoughts. Listen, if I was Miranda and I saw that kid disappear like that, immediately no. I don't have time to help out another ghost. Their first one took me through it. I remember watching this movie years ago and leaving out of the theater thinking, that ghost did way too much. Why didn't Rachel just tell her what was going on? But now that I'm older and after watching it again, I realized that she had to be aggressive to really get through to Miranda. Miranda looked at things logically. There was no room for ifs, maybes, or supernatural factors. Everything had to be backed by research, science, and facts. This is why when Chloe was telling her about being attacked in the prison, Miranda wanted to link it to her stepfather. She believed this was an imagining due to past trauma, but Chloe was very clear about killing her stepfather and not having remorse. Chloe handled the situation with her stepfather. When she mentioned the attack in the prison, you could tell that she felt out of control, like she didn't have the power to do to this person what she did to her stepfather. It took Miranda to be in Chloe's shoes and the prisoner herself to look deeper into what was happening, to experience how it feels to know you are telling the truth, but other people's perception of you and your situation overrides that truth. And being hunted or possessed challenged her own way of thinking. Initially, she tried to find a logical explanation for her husband being killed, her seeing the girl, her being hunted by the girl. But eventually, she had to believe in the unknown and accept that new path. One thing that this movie did well was show how well people can manage double lives. Doug was this likable person, great husband, friend, and colleague. Everyone looked up to him. Nobody knew what he was capable of, not even his wife. Everybody thought he was a good guy, but Doug had a God complex. This was hinted at the beginning and confirmed towards the end when Miranda played the video back in the barn. He felt like he controlled everything. This man gave Bob access to the prison to freely pick and choose who to attack. Sadly, it was the perfect setup because who was gonna believe these women? They are mentally unwell. And then with access to drugs to sedate them, they might not even remember or be able to process what's happening to them. When explained, it could very well sound like a hallucination. Random thought. Since Doug had a God complex, do you think Bob played into being the devil? Was that their thing? What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. I wish we could have seen more of Miranda and Pete's relationship. It was implied that there was something there, but we really didn't get to dive into it, nor did we find out what happened with them after. I know a lot of people have trashed this film over the years, but to me, it's still a good one. It makes you look at how people are treated when they have mental health issues or are deemed crazy, and how people will take advantage of these people knowing that they can and will get away with it because, like Chloe said, no one trusts a crazy person. Anyway, that's it for this review. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. This concludes our Halloween-themed recaps. I'll try to incorporate more horror films into the rotation though. As for the next review, all I'm going to say is 1993. This thriller stars two popular kid actors from the 90s. Listen, Problem Child nor Bebe's kids had nothing on this evil kid. Nobody's safe if he's home. Not a cousin, not even the mama. See you next time, you guys. Bye.